Hey everybody, this is Nate Dancer with Pure Life Ministries. You're about to listen to one of the segments from our bi-weekly podcast, Purity for Life. We take you where real life meets real Christianity as we tackle the tough issues for those struggling with sexual sin. We hope you enjoy.
Kathy Gallagher has joined me in the studio. Kathy, so good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here.
Kathy, we want to deal with a question today from a woman who has struggled with forgiving her husband. In fact, she wrote, "I realize it takes time to forgive your husband, but I'm still struggling. What can I do?" What would you share with a woman who's still struggling with that issue?
That is a big issue for a lot of women who have been hurt by their husband's sexual sin. It's a pretty deep wound, and it takes time for a woman to process through all her emotions. And I'd say probably the biggest thing that they have to fight through is the forgiveness issue. It doesn't come easy to a lot of women. It's very hard to put it behind you. Forgiveness is what I consider it a gift. I remember when Steve came to me and repented for his sin. It came immediately for me. I really didn't struggle very much with forgiving him. I wanted to forgive him, and I think that was probably a big thing, but that's a gift. Forgiveness is a gift from God. We don't, as human beings, carry that around in our hearts. It's not inherent.
Well, I was going to ask you, is the fact that someone is struggling with forgiveness, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to?
No, you can want to and still struggle with it, but a lot of the women that I've dealt with, Mike, confuse forgiveness with trust. And I think that's a big issue. In fact, I just was counseling a lady a couple weekends ago. Her problem isn't that she is holding it against him. She's not reminding him of it. Those are characteristics of someone who has not forgiven. They keep bringing the past up. They keep rubbing their nose in it, reminding them of the hurt, the pain, what you've done to me.
They just won't let go of it.
Yeah, and there's bitterness. There's bitterness with that. But a woman who is struggling with trust is different. She's not necessarily holding the past against him, but it's hard to forget what's been done. And, I always counsel women not to confuse the two. Forgiveness, you let the person's debt go. You let them go free in your heart. You're not going to hold it against them anymore. You're not going to keep rubbing their nose in it, reminding them how they have failed. You're going to war against bitterness that wants to well up in your heart. They're things that you can do. Trusting someone is something that the other person really has to work on. If your husband has sinned against you, he's the one that needs to work on trust.
So it's something that has to be rebuilt.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because you're questioning what is going on doesn't mean you're not forgiving. And a lot of husbands, what they'll do is, because a woman is naturally going to be afraid of it happening again, she'll ask questions. I know I did with Steve, and he'd come home from work, "How was your day?" You try to ask discreet questions without coming right out and say, "Did you fall?"
Right. Right. I think sometimes the husbands would just rather you come out and ask.
Well, I think they would rather you didn't say anything at all.
Maybe so.
A lot of men, most men, I would say, want to just act like this never happened. Okay, I've repented. Let's move on.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I understand the heart of a man wanting to do that. But a man needs to understand the heart of a woman.
The man doesn't understand that need to rebuild the trust, does he?
No. They just want to move on. They want to act like it didn't happen. But men, listen, hello.
Wake up, guys.
It doesn't happen like that. It really does take time to build trust. And that is the husband's responsibility. And there are things that he needs to do to build that trust. But for the wife that's listening and the husband's not, what you need to do is look at his life. Yeah, you're going to struggle with trust, but if you're looking at his life and you're seeing him being faithful to the Lord, he's going to God every day in prayer, you see him trying, he wants to make it, you need to get behind him and support him and try as best as you can to keep your fears to yourself, because there's nothing he can do about that. And for a woman to go to her husband and try and get him to placate her fears is the wrong path to go. He's not the one you should be going to.
Oh, she needs to go to the Lord.
She absolutely needs to go to the Lord. And if your husband tells you 1,000 times a day, "Honey, I love you, everything's wonderful, I'm not going to sin," that fear is still going to be there, because the husband is not the one to deal with it. The Lord is the one to deal with it. And you have to present that to God. Lord, I'm struggling. You got to help me.
How important is communication between the husband and the wife in rebuilding this trust?
That's a very good point, Mike. It is so important. And this is another area where men tend to not be real big on the communication thing.
We can't even spell communication. Please don't make me talk.
No.
That's the guy, right?
Well, yeah.
Don't make me do that.
And don't talk to me when I'm in my nothing
My box.
Yeah. Husbands need to understand that that's relationship to a woman. That is the relationship. If I could scream out one thing to men and women that is the most important, and I actually don't even need to tell this to women. Women already know this. But one thing I would say to men is that is the most important thing you can do for your marriage, especially one that where the trust has been broken. Communication is so, so important.
Amen. Well, I appreciate you drawing that distinction between a lack of forgiveness and a lack of trust. I'm sure that'll be a help to a lot of women who have really wondered, have I even forgiven my husband? Kathy Gallagher, thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for listening to this segment from Purity for Life. If you want to hear the full show, go to purelifeministries.org/podcast or check us out in the iTunes Store.